There's no denying at the moment it's pretty chilly out there, even though there's some decent sunshine, also a scattering of showers, but all changes as we go through this 10-day period. Let's start off though looking at the bigger picture as we go into Thursday, and the reason why it's so chilly at the moment, it's high pressure to the northwest of us, and because of the position of this, we are dragging in our air from the north, and if we track that back, it's coming from the Arctic, a cold location, and so no wonder that we have chilly air across us, and so temperatures are, at least on paper, a little bit below average for the time of year. But if we go through Thursday, then a bit of a chilly start and some showers, mainly in areas exposed to that northerly wind initially, so northern parts of Scotland, eastern coastal areas as well, but I think as we go through the day, those showers becoming a bit more widespread, pushing a bit further west and southwestwards. Some of those showers will be a bit wintry, some sleet, some snow over higher ground to lower levels, really just maybe a mix of hail and rain at times, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side, but there should be some bright or sunny spells in between the showers. Worth noting though, like I said, temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year, mid to high single figures really at best for most of us, but on Thursday the winds are going to be a little bit lighter than we've seen through some recent days, less of a wind chill, so perhaps feeling slightly less chilly for some places. A few more showers to come across many areas as we go through the evening, but overnight most places turning largely dry, just a few showers continuing in the east. However, a zone of something a little bit cloudier and a bit wetter pushing its way southwards across Scotland into Northern Ireland and later Northern England and perhaps North Wales as we go through Friday morning. There will be some winteriness mixed in with this. I'll talk about that in a second. Otherwise, as we go through into the afternoon, a rash of showers across many places, perhaps towards the west, avoiding the worst of these, but yes, plenty of showers, and again some could be on the heavy side, the odd rumble of thunder not out of the question, and still some sleet, some snow mixed in with them, and a bit of hail perhaps at times as well. Temperatures on Friday look fairly similar to Thursday really. Worth bearing in mind though, in the far northwest it could be quite windy to start and some blustery winds possible in the southeast later on, otherwise generally light winds. Like I said, there will be some winteriness around as we go through Friday. If we look at the freezing levels, and this is the height above sea level at which we have 0 degrees, and it plays a role in whether or not we see sleet or snow, and as that system that I mentioned pushes its way southwards through the early hours across parts of Scotland, some relatively low freezing levels here, hence why we are going to see some sleet, some snow, perhaps a bit of snow settling over some modest higher ground, and even some relatively low freezing levels further south, so some of those showers are likely to be wintry. But let's look towards the weekend, and the high pressure that was to the northwest of us by Saturday will have pushed its way a little bit closer, and it's going to dominate our weather. If you watch our 10-day trends and our other content, you'll likely know high pressure often settles our weather down, and it is going to do that this time. But with that, also worth noting, we still have the chilly air across us, so no drastic rise in our temperatures just yet. So a relatively chilly start on Saturday morning, especially across northern parts. Here we will have some clear skies, so a bit of frost around, some icy patches, some fog, some freezing fog for some. Temperatures perhaps in rural spots getting as low as -5, maybe -6. Possibly even colder than this, but further south a bit milder, perhaps still chilly, a touch of frost not out of the question, but not as cold as further north. As we go through the day, however, with that high pressure firmly in control, it's looking largely fine, 1 or 2 showers perhaps, but most of us avoiding these, and a good deal of dry, bright, sunny weather to be had. Though across Orkney, Shetland, here it is going to be cloudy and there will be a little bit of rain pushing through. Now temperatures on paper, they look relatively similar to the next couple of days. High single figures, maybe just about scraping into double digits, so slightly higher. But it is always worth factoring in with generally light winds for most of us, and there will be some decent sunny weather around. It's not feeling too bad. Temperatures in the sunshine, well, it will feel a bit warmer, markedly warmer in the sunshine. It has got some decent warmth behind it now at this time of year. Later on, and as we go into Sunday, one thing that we need to look at is the fact that there's even colder air a bit further north, just to the west of Scandinavia. And in between this even colder air and the chilly air that we have across the UK, there's a slice of something a little bit milder. And within this zone, there's a bit more cloud and even a bit of rain. And all of that is going to push its way southwards as we go through Sunday. So there is a front indicating that we are likely to see a spell of cloud and rain pushing its way into parts of Scotland as we go through the early hours of Sunday. So a cloudier start here. As a result, not as chilly a start here as it will be on Saturday morning. But conversely, across more central southern parts, it's a different story. It's going to be perhaps colder on Sunday morning than it will have been on Saturday morning. So a greater chance of some frosts, greater chance of some perhaps icy patches if there's still any wet surfaces anywhere, and also a greater chance of some mist, fog, freezing fog patches developing as well. As we go through the day on Sunday, that zone of cloud with outbreaks of rain will feed a little bit further southwards across much of Scotland into Northern Ireland, perhaps Northern England as well later on, but further south, a greater chance of staying largely dry, perhaps a bit cloudier for many places than Saturday, but actually towards the far south, southeast in particular, Kent, for example, likely to cling on to the largely sunny skies, and temperatures for many similar, perhaps a degree or so higher than on Saturday for some places. So high single figures, low double digits perhaps. As we go through later on Sunday and overnight into Monday, the cloud, the outbreaks of rain, none of it especially heavy, but all pushes its way southwards. So as we go into Monday itself, a bit of a messy day. There will be more cloud around than we'll have had over the weekend, and it is going to be damper, outbreaks of rain, but none of this looks especially heavy because we still have high pressure relatively close to the UK. But this is the 10-day trend, so let's look further ahead. And here's the probability plot showing the most likely setups that we're going to have through the next couple of weeks, and the reds indicate higher pressure, more settled weather, and as we go through next week, blues becoming more likely, and with that change to something a bit more changeable, a bit more unsettled looks pretty likely as we go through next week. There is relatively good agreement that we are going to see that change to something more unsettled, but exactly when it happens and how severe or how drastic it is, if it is drastic at all, well, that's still all to play for. And actually, as we go on beyond next week, there's relatively high uncertainty. That's beyond this 10-day trend period though, so I'm not going to worry about that for now. If we look at the most likely setup for next Tuesday, the 18th of March, and it still has high pressure not too far away, quite a big area of high pressure over Scandinavia and a bit further east, but I think by then there's a good chance that we'll be more under the influence of low pressure somewhere towards the west of us. And because of this setup, it changes where our wind will be coming from. So we say goodbye to that northerly that we have at the moment, and instead our wind will most likely be coming from the southeast. Now that's a milder, warmer direction, so we are gradually going to be seeing our temperatures rising. Not a huge jump up just yet, but nonetheless we're going to see our temperatures rising. We could see some showery bursts mixed in with this. Worth looking at the second most likely setup. It's not drastically different, still low pressure to the west of us, but it's a bit further away, and actually the high pressure is a little bit closer, and so that means we'd still have a bit more of an easterly. That's a slightly chillier direction at this time of year than a southeasterly, so that might delay perhaps the slight rise in our temperatures for a little while. So like I said before, there is some uncertainty as to how quickly we see this transition to something milder and more changeable, but it is coming. Now let's look further ahead, and for next Wednesday here we have the first, second and third most likely setups, and they all show relatively similar ideas. Low pressure somewhere towards the west or perhaps towards the northwest of the UK, maybe even very close towards the northwest if we look at the third most likely. But that all goes with the idea that our wind direction is going to gradually change as we go through next week. So it's going to go from a east-southeasterly round to a southerly, and then eventually, if we just go ahead a couple of days, here's Thursday, a southwesterly becomes more likely, and then if we go even further still, and by Friday, well, the most likely setup has low pressure somewhere towards Iceland, in which case we'd have quite a westerly flow, and looking at those ice bars, they're relatively strong. With the transition to southwest or westerly wind, that means a couple of things. Our weather's going to become more changeable, more mobile, and so we're likely to see some wet and windy weather coming through from the west and southwest. And so yeah, it is going to be more unsettled, particularly towards western and southwestern parts. That's where we're most likely to have the wet weather. I would expect with this kind of setup for some rain to push its way through, so it's not going to be completely dry towards the east-northeast, but wetter towards the west-southwest as we often see. But another big talking point will be those rises, or that rise in temperatures. We are going to see milder, warmer air pushing its way in. So let's look at the meteograms from ECMWF for our capital cities. Now, I'm aware these capital cities don't cover every inch of the UK, but they give a good trend and a good idea. And if we take one, for example, Cardiff, and you can see at the moment temperatures both by day and by night are quite markedly below average for the time of year, especially by night. We have some chilly, frosty nights at the moment, like I've already discussed. But sticking below average as we go through the weekend, then gradually rising up as we go through next week. With that change, we change our wind direction, we get that unsettled, changeable weather coming through, but we also see a rise in our temperatures. Now, I think by day, the rise in temperatures won't necessarily be all that noticeable because, like I said, at this time of year, when we get the sunshine, of which we'll have a decent amount this weekend, it's going to feel pleasant enough. When we flip that with something a bit cloudier, wetter, windier, probably not feeling that any more pleasant, even though temperatures on paper will be a little bit higher and we'll have that milder air coming through. By night, however, I think the milder, warmer conditions will be a bit more noticeable. So we'll say goodbye to the frosts and the greater chance of some fog, freezing fog perhaps as well. And instead, our nights are going to become milder, not just because we have milder air across us, but also because there'll be spells of rain, bit of cloud and some stronger winds mixed in. So we don't have the ingredients for temperatures to drop. So yeah, there is going to be a change as we go through the next 10 days. The details exactly how unsettled it's going to be, it could be pretty wet and windy at times. So definitely one to stay on top of, but those details will firm up as we get nearer the time. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.